can you get the machinery ready in 3 weeks? And I looked at him and I said, absolutely not.
This came at the worst of times. There was a huge backlog of documents for processing both in Canada and in the US after the disaster of September the 11th.
No, that's right. That's why I want to make sure that you're...
But at last, the freeze dryer became available.
Here we go. It's the 11th to 13th of May. It'd be my objective to have it done by Christmas. Whether that happens, I'm not sure.
It was due to arrive in Hyderabad in May 2002, 21 months after the flood.
Let's do it. Let's set it up for the first quarter.
But now there was another problem. The travel agent had called to warn us that the India-Pakistan conflict was flaring up again.
Okay.
The news reports said that international travel was inadvisable, and it was possible that all Americans could be recalled.
Are the Canadians involved?
But Marshall knew that if we didn't travel then,
Okay.
the freeze dryer would no longer
I'll
be
turn on
available.
CNN now. I'll call you back. All right, thanks.
Then the Indian consulate banned my entry, insisting that I first obtain government permission to film there. But at the last minute they reversed their decision. Even so, I would keep a low profile using minimal equipment to look as much as possible like a tourist.
Yeah, the uncertainty was considerably higher when we landed than just talking to the people prior to our departure from Vancouver. So things were unfolding. Things on the political scene, things were changing hourly.
But Murali assured us that there was nothing to worry about. And in fact, there seemed very little danger. He told us that although Taliban supporters were on the alert, there had been no demonstrations or violence. Even so, we would have to be careful always to show that we were Canadians. The freeze dryer had arrived, apparently undamaged. There was no visible evidence of the many complications encountered during the flight from Canada or the road journey across India to Hyderabad.
So the installation of the machine was one obstacle. Bringing a crane that was too small, trying to get it off of a truck that arrived late in a street that was filled with people, and keep our mind off of what was going on in India. It was a challenge. The power lines, well, that was another issue. But to them it was just an everyday event, and this is the way life goes on in India.
We thought it looks very monstrous, and we thought a tin box, things like that. We never thought that it's going to be such a solid machine, and it's mind-boggling.
Our whole intention here was to go through a series of dry runs with the staff here and actually fire up the machine, load the first load, wait for that load to be completed, so we ran a full cycle with them while we were still here. So we got the power portion almost complete, and we went home for the evening. And the next morning, I had woken up fairly early to give my wife a call at home. She had stated to me, "Are you leaving?" And I said, "No, why?" She says, "Well, in the newspapers they're calling for this major strike to happen between Pakistan and India, and then the threat of nuclear warheads were being used."
We had been told by the Canadian Embassy and by the Vancouver office that we must leave immediately.
But we weren't getting the American side of the story. We weren't getting the Canadian side of the story. Email access was down. Telephone service was unstable. My cell phone didn't work in Hyderabad, so we really were reaching for straws, trying to find any information we could. We had tickets scheduled to return to Vancouver via London. We had to scramble to try and replace those seats. So we had to dash from cash machine to cash machine with every credit card and bank card that we had, trying to gather enough rupees together in paper money. I think it took them 20 minutes to count the notes. It was hilarious. So we did the best we could. We gathered everyone into a huddle and assigned responsibilities and duties, tried to reassure them, and perhaps they were, without realizing it, they were reassuring us that this could happen.
Nothing was easy. There was the differential in power frequency from 60 cycles to 50, which could compromise the machine's performance. And installation of the transformer and voltage stabilizer was still not complete.
As the day progressed, as information came in that we had to leave, there was a lot of anxiety because our planning was to have at least a week of training. Suddenly we had to leave. And so we were faced with the realization, how are we going to convey all this information, potentially leave the equipment at risk and jump on a plane? Suddenly, when we had all the pieces in place for the first time, the only thing we didn't have was time.
Shut down the machine. Open this valve here. Drain your oil.
2 weeks of training in one night and no dry run.
Marshal kept telling, oh, come on, let's go this time, because we have to check in 3 hours before. There's hardly any time. Poor fellows, they have not even eaten that day.
Okay, don't forget now, we have to make sure that this runs up to 24 hours, and you will shut down. Can you check, please?
Here, we have to go.
No, but we can't do it
Hey,
like this.
just a second.
Just a second.
What happened?
We're going to have to put this together another way. Don't worry about it, we'll make it work. But for the moment, let's keep our schedule. Let's go.
If you can't, get the part number off of it, email me the
Come
part
on,
number.
you can go tomorrow.
We can't.
One day.
The government has told us to leave now.
And this was to have been a celebration.
Here we are with our piece of machinery sitting in the country halfway around the world, not running, and we had to go.
It would be another 3 days before the Cromwell team would reach Vancouver. There, the next priority was to set up some form of reliable communication with the team at SVK. With the Canadians gone, much support came from the Hindhai Company, India's leader in vacuum technology, 200 miles away in Bangalore. They sent their technicians to help.
Thanks to the email, and it's a good thing that the email exists here and basically all the way around the world. Otherwise, I don't think this project would have taken off. And we knew that we were leaving it in some competent hands. We had a lot of confidence in the electrical engineer that was working on the project with us from India, who put a lot of time and a lot of devotion into this project.
I was actually a little bit frightened actually, because that is a huge equipment coming from Canada, and again we have to make a suitable interface for that. So I felt a little bit panic about that, scared about making the specifications and equipment suitable for that. Because I did not have any past experience also.
Once we got assurance from Cromwell, look, you can mend it, we have no objection, we were happy. Because if you read the contract, it said that we are not even supposed to touch a bolt.
For a couple of weeks, we had sleepless nights and cell phone calls in the middle of the night, recognizing at that time we were, I think, 12 and a half hours difference. Chowdhury would phone, for example, and say, can you call me back on the landline, because he didn't have the funding to pay for a cell phone call. So he would call me, I would try and call him back and then not be able to get through.
Our telephone bills were pretty substantial with all the phone calls going back and forth to India. And as time went on, less expensive but quite frequent phone calls to Vancouver, to Cromwell.
Marshall? Chowdhury. Okay.
So we said, Marshal, yeah, what to do with it? We don't know how to operate it. They said, no, don't worry, we'll give you a hands-on run on the empty machine, doesn't matter.
We had done several dry runs with the staff at SVK. We went through just about everything that could possibly go wrong with the machine, ran through all the different scenarios. So in the back of our mind, I think we did really realize that the staff that was here going to work on this was going to be able to complete the project.
It was 15 days before they were ready to start the machine. So the first batch of books came out of deep freeze in June 2002, nearly 2 years after the flood. After so many months of waiting, it was a great relief to be finally moving forward. The whole SVK staff was there. This was one day they will never forget. The Canadians had tried to predict what they would find hidden in the crates when they were emptied. Many mould varieties are extremely hardy and could begin sporulation soon after leaving the sub-zero environment. Also, the possibility of waterborne pathogens was troubling.
There is a Urdu book of very old type. Keep this cover, and then there is any sedimentation on the top, we just simply remove with the cloth like this, and then put it for machine. This is a Urdu magazine. Well, it's bunched together, so we'll just keep them as it is. The machine.
In the beginning, when they explained the whole process, we thought there is some process where they just take out the ice out of the box and then they give you back fresh. But then they said, no, the books are going to be heated up. My God, what are they going to do? Are they going to cook the books?
The heating process Murali referred to occurs within the vacuum, and care would have to be taken to ensure that the application of heat did not raise the temperature above freezing. When the carts are in position, each one is connected to the unit to ensure maximum differential between vapour pressure inside the books and the unit itself, through the flow of sublimation fluids.
I feel deprived not having had the experience of really seeing the machinery and not seeing how it worked on site. I would very much like to have had that experience, but given the choices being delaying further so that I could see it in action, or getting it going and completed sooner, we made the right decision by going ahead and finishing it faster.
Starting it up was a challenge. There was a sequence: vacuum pressure, coil temperature, core temperature, every move monitored in Vancouver, and then wait for a week. Thermal vacuum freeze drying is the technique of drying frozen materials by sublimation and desorption in a vacuum at sub-zero temperatures. The process of sublimation is the change of a solid substance directly to a vapour, without first passing through the liquid state. Desorption is the reverse movement of moisture out of paper during sublimation. In the primary drying phase, sublimation of surface ice crystals occurs. In the secondary drying phase, the moisture diffuses from the matrix of the paper and is desorbed from its surface. Thermal adjustments accelerate the rate of sublimation. That was a week like no other. For 7 days they watched the machine day and night. Every variable was logged and hourly updates were sent by internet to the Cromwell laboratory in Vancouver. At the end of 7 days they started the shutdown procedure to reintroduce atmosphere into the chamber. And they waited. I was reminded of a potter opening his kiln. The paper had survived. The ink had survived. They had succeeded. But a panic call came after the chamber was opened.
Chowdhury,
It was mid-afternoon in Hyderabad and they were desperate.
what's going on?
There was far too much ice on the condensing coils. It wasn't possible for so much moisture to come out of one load of 3,000 books, so something must be wrong. That's when Gary and Marshall knew the equipment was fully operational. In the Cromwell laboratories, under controlled conditions, with vacuum chambers 4 times the size of the portable one in India, they knew that substantial volumes of ice could only be sublimated from wet paper if the equipment was operating correctly. That call from Hyderabad was music to their ears.
We were ecstatic when we got the email that said that the first load was completed and the cycle ran in 7 days and the machine was actually up and running, and that the 50 cycles wasn't playing that big of a factor on the performance of the machine.
When I first opened the door of that machine, it opened